You need to practice more than you invest in reading and that stuff. So this is why we constantly have new rounds of leadership development. Of course, we read. It's good to read and it's good to get things in your head, but the more important is also to do the leadership. So I'm thinking in development cycles. I think it needs 2 to 3 years to develop leaders to some position, and then they start developing their own people in their area of influence, and then I start a new round of leadership development.
Welcome to the Leadership Podcast. Today I have a special guest here with me, Joe from Germany. He has started his own church, and today we will learn some leadership principles out of his life, his experience, and I am sure that you will take a lot out of this conversation, out of this interview for yourself as a leader. And so stay till the end. And right now, I want to welcome you, Joe, to our leadership podcast. We want to learn how your leadership really developed and how did you know you were a leader. I want to go to the very beginning as we start. You started your own church, but let's go even further back. How did you know that you were the one who wants to start? Because leaders start things. So how did you know you were a leader in the very beginning?
Yes, I think that's a very good question. I think leadership develops very early in life when you are in a group and you always can find out who wants to take the initiative, even when it comes to forming a group in the sports lessons at school, or when it comes to, hey, where are we going to go after a meeting? To which restaurant are we going to go? And I always felt the desire to lead the people, and I always liked to take the initiative and to gather the group and to say, hey, let's go in this direction. So I think leadership emerges very, very soon in your life. It's not everybody feels it like that. Some people also need to develop it. You can see it in them, but in my case, I think I always liked to lead.
So it was more like leadership was a character that you had to initiate movement, gather people, get people going for something rather than a position. And because I know you are living in Germany, and so many people are taught that if they continue going to school, to a university, they one day will be a leader. Is that true or not?
Well, that's absolutely not true, because real leadership has not much to do with a position. Real leadership has to do with influence. And you can influence people around you everywhere where you are. You can influence people in your neighborhood. You can influence people in your sports club. You can influence people in your church. So in my case, I started influencing other people at church when I was asked to share, like a Bible teaching at my youth group. And that's maybe the initial point where I started to have influence through my communication.
So becoming a leader means to take influence. If you zoom out and say, when you take influence, what are the key elements that you work with to take influence in other people's lives?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think one key element is that you like to communicate, because through communication you connect with other people. And then it comes to what are you communicating? I think other people want to be encouraged, and other people want to like it when you see the potential in them. So it's my conviction that God created everybody with a special set of gifts, and these gifts only need to be discovered so that they can reach their full potential. And that brings a lot of joy in the life of everybody. So as a leader, when you start taking influence, basically what you are doing is you see that potential in the other person and you speak that potential into their lives, because oftentimes the people don't see it yet. So when you tell them, for example, hey, I think you can communicate too. Why don't you prepare a short message? And then you stay on their side and you cheer them. And all of a sudden they discover that they also can communicate. That's a beautiful thing. And you start taking influence.
So, what often people have a picture of leadership is that the leader goes first and does everything. But what you're saying is that the leader is the one who empowers others. How can a leader effectively empower others? And what are your tips on how a leader can do that most effectively?
Yes, I think there is a leadership saying, and it goes like that: leaders see more, and before other people do see the things. And that's something you practice as an empowering leader. You see more possibilities for the people around you, and you see it before the other people see it, and you use that skill to empower them. They don't see them yet in the position they can serve, but you already trust them with it. So, for example, if you say, "I think you can organize that event," and somebody in your team says, "Well, I'm not sure if I can do this," then you lend them of your trust, of your power, and you empower them to do this. And then all of a sudden they gain more self-confidence when you stand by their side. So you see something they cannot see yet, and after they did it, they also see it, and that's a beautiful thing to experience. So this is one way of practically empowering other people, and the more you do it, the more you can see it with the next and the next person. For example, in our situation in our church, we have a tool we call volunteering. That's we have a person in our church who wants to give more. So we say, if you want to serve 4 hours at least a week, then you can come and we will invest in you as a volunteer. And I love to see the young people and see the potential they have and put them into a new setting of tasks that they don't see for themselves yet, and see how they develop into this. For example, I have a guy in my church. His name is Johannes, and he is serving as a volunteer. So I'm teaching him now how to prepare the slides for our stage communication. And he didn't do this before, but now he's really having a good level of excellence in this task already, and he really enjoys it. But he didn't see himself doing this or being able to do this before he became a volunteer. And so we have other tasks where we put people into something that they don't feel really ready to do it.
So when I hear you talk about how people in your church are learning new skills and you are teaching them and empowering them to do that,
yes,
that will create automatically growth, not only in a personal life, but also as a church. Let's go back to the very beginning. You started the church over 10 years ago.
Yeah.
How did you start and why did you start?
Yes, we started the church by inviting people who wanted to see a new way of church for our city. Because oftentimes organizations, as also churches, they get used to a certain way of doing things. And this happened with many churches in our city. But we wanted to create a church where you can really make a new kind of church experience, where you really want to bring your friends. And this time I was in university studying still, and I wanted to bring my friends to my church. So I did bring some friends to my church, but I experienced that there are some certain parts that I could not really, identify or be proud of. And I wanted to have a church in our city, as I knew from other cities, where I can bring students, young professionals, young families, and they would say, wow, the way you do worship here, this is really inspiring. The friendliness of your welcome team, that's really makes me feel like in a family. And the way you communicate here, it's really relevant for my everyday life. And I couldn't find a church that really felt like this. That's why we gathered a group of 12 to 14 people and said, we want to build a church like this in our city.
I love that, because you as a leader, you were in a church that you did not feel comfortable, but the leadership passion in you said, I will step out, take a risk, and try something new. So out of that group of 14 people, how did you empower more people and how did it grow?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we had like starter meetings every Sunday evening at 5. and everybody could invite their friends to join and also be part of that vision. So from the beginning, we divided the different tasks that we have. For example, we had every evening we had a meal that we could share around the table in order to have good conversation. So somebody could make the dinner, and then we had also somebody welcoming the people. And from the beginning, we were empowering people to take their part of responsibility in the church that was being planted.
So you have grown the church, you have grown leaders inside your church. How do you grow as a leader yourself?
Yes, that's a very good question, because if we stop growing as a leader, our organization will not continue to grow. So there are different sources of growth for myself. One source of growing is that I love to read good books. I love to read leadership books. So I constantly read books. I read around 12 books a year, so every month a book around. That's one thing I love to do. And also I always mark my books, because I want to find again the quotes that really spoke to my heart. And then if you don't like reading, you can also do it by listening. There are great leadership podcasts, as this one out, and I regularly also listen to podcasts. But maybe the best form to grow as a leader is having good conversations with other leaders, where you can really bring your specific problems to talk about and to struggle for the best solution.
And how do you do that?
One thing is that we have a conversation in the leadership team. If we have difficult topics, then we bring this topic and discuss around the topic. Maybe also pick a specific book to tackle this topic. And I also, when I meet leaders from other churches, I bring the problem to the table and ask them how they solve the problem in their organization. So I can take a lot of learning from leaders from other churches. That's why it's so good to be in a movement of churches.
I think it also takes a lot of humbleness, to be in a circle of, let's say, same level leaders and still say, hey, how are you guys doing this? I'm struggling with this issue. And I think that's something that's such an important character of a leader people want to follow.
Yeah.
Not a leader that knows everything, but a leader that's also growing.
Yes.
And so now looking to the future, if you see yourself in 10 more years,
oh, wow.
where do you see yourself?
Andy, 10 years is a lot of time. I think it's easier to think in 3 years, but 10 years is really big. And for me, I think the biggest dream would be seeing that we don't only multiply leaders inside our church, but my big dream would be that our church can multiply as a church, as an organization, so that we would have different new locations in other cities in Germany, and working across these locations together as one church, and really taking advantage of the time we already built church together in our town that we are now, but also taking advantage of the whole team in the different locations. That is one big dream. I don't want to be the front leader that stands on stage every Sunday. I want to see other leaders rise up and taking responsibility and taking joy from that, and how people are reached with the gospel of Jesus in different cities.
I love that. Let me ask you one more question about the leadership process. You are raising up leaders.
Yeah.
How much is doing and how much is learning? Like in a classroom, you also have a leadership academy, so they are learning in a classroom environment, and how much is really they need to practice, they need to do? Because leadership is not something that you learn in a book.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, I have to say that I, as I was raised, it was a lot about theory and a lot about reading. But now, as we practice it in our church, and as I am convinced it really brings results, is you need to practice more than you invest in reading and that stuff. So this is why we constantly have new rounds of leadership development. Of course, we read. It's good to read and it's good to get things in your head, but the more important is also to do the leadership. So I'm thinking in development cycles. I think it needs it needs 2 to 3 years to develop leaders to some position, and then they start developing their own people in their area of influence, and then I start a new round of leadership development. And now it's a really exciting moment in our church history, because I feel one round is like finishing. They are already taking their own leaders, and I can start with the next round. And this is where I can see like three levels of leadership development cycles happening right now. Maybe it sounds a little bit theoretical, but for me it's really exciting, because I can't wait to see how the first round, the second round, and the third round are connecting and going together in one direction. I think it's gonna be really powerful.
I like that. I like that. It takes time, and you talked about 3 years. I think that's a time period where you learn a lot of theory, also got some experience, made some mistakes to learn from that. Let's imagine there is somebody listening to this podcast that right now is in a similar situation than you 10 years ago, in a church where they don't feel like they can invite their friends and it's not attractive, but they feel like, oh, maybe I can start a new church.
Yes.
Maybe, but I don't know, and I'm not sure. What would you tell that person?
Yeah, I would tell that person that this thirst that you feel in your side, you need to feed it. You need to feed it, and I would encourage that person to go on praying about this, and also visit other churches that have been planted recently, because you are not alone out there. You are not the only person with this desire. There are other church plants around you, and go and visit this. Even if you have to sit in your car and drive 2 hours, go make an appointment with that leader, ask for half an hour, ask for an hour of their time, bring some questions, be prepared, and get to know other leaders who do that, because you are not alone, and this can encourage you very much. And follow that dream, don't give up, because we have way too few church plants. We need more churches all around the globe.
Very good. So somebody in Germany that right now hears this, they can call you.
Absolutely, call me, come by. I invite you on a coffee, and let's talk about church planting.
I love it. I love it. Leadership is about setting an example.
Yes.
It's not about teaching. It's not about what you have done, but it's about living as an example people can follow.
Absolutely.
When it comes to setting an example, what is the most important thing for you in your life?
I think as a leader, we never shall lose the spirit of humility. You know, like at the beginning of this year, I could teach a message about Jesus and the towel. And you know, Jesus took his towel he washed the feet of his disciples, and then he took this towel to dry his feet. And I think we can have as much success as we want, but we never shall stop serving our people. So if necessary, I'm willing to do every task in church. If there is something laying on the floor, I pick it up and put it in the trash can. If the floor needs to be cleaned, I help to clean the floor. We never grow out of serving with humility. Of course, it's not my task to lead every team after 10 years, but I'm always ready to jump in and to serve no matter what task.
I love that. I think this is a great way to end this conversation. Leadership is about serving, is about empowering other people. It's not what I can get, how I can grow, how I can be bigger and more influential, but how can I help others grow?
Absolutely.
And this will also grow everything that leaders do. And leaders are changing this world one by one. I love it.
Absolutely.
I take that humility, take that just that servant heart. I think this is a great, great statement at the end. A great leader is a great servant. He has the towel, washes the feet of the people that follow him. In your life as well, who are you leading and who can you serve? Even with the surprise, just like our example, Jesus, really surprising, get down on your knees when they did not expect it to serve in a very practical and relevant way. Thank you very much, Joe, for being a part of
Thanks
this
for having me.
conversation. Thank you for listening. Click like, subscribe, and share this podcast with other leaders that you think would be encouraged by listening to this.
Thanks for having me, Andy.
You're welcome. Thank you. Bye-bye.